Hi there. We've just arrived at Linseed farm in Sussex, and I've come here to talk to Durwin Banks, who's really been at the cusp of farming for many years, as well as health. And I've come to talk to him about some of the big challenges that are faced by British farmers today. Durwin, hi.
Hello,
so
Rob.
nice to be on your farm.
Great to see you here. After all these years we've been talking, and now finally you've arrived.
We've come here to have a really important conversation with you, and it really is about farming and real food. There are people out there who have demonized meat. We have a climate change crisis, we've got an environmental crisis, a biodiversity crisis, but can you perhaps say a few words initially before we go into detail about, is farming going to survive? And we've got Brexit to think about as well.
We've got a whole lot of stuff, haven't we? Yeah, I guess really up until 20 years ago when I started working with Linseed, I really didn't know very much about all of these issues as well. And I think, like the medical profession and the farming profession, we were sucked into a chemical and industrial world. And we all thought, this is a good thing, it's dealing with our weeds, it's answering a lot of problems. And now, increasingly, farmers and doctors are thinking, hang on, we've actually gone down the wrong road. And they're talking about gut health and the biome of the gut. And there's a biome of the soil as well, and farmers are talking about that. So I certainly hope that real farming will continue. And if we decide that we're going to look after the soil properly, it can do. And that, I think, means going back a little bit and having smaller mixed farms that don't have such an impact. So obviously we've got to feed ourselves, and we can feed ourselves. We've got to stop throwing away food and probably stop eating too much, that kind of thing, and then get things back into balance.
So there are more and more people who are suggesting that the traditional systems of farming that have been going now for 10,000 years or so are going to collapse in the next 20-30 years, and we need to make way for meat analogues, cell-based technologies, fermentation units, microalgae, and basically get rid of this kind of farming. What's your view?
I don't know how you could possibly expect me to agree with that. But we have
want you to comment on it. Comment on it.
Right, we've got the perfect machines already to convert the grass into meat that we need, so we don't have to bother with factories. Factories have already done us a lot of damage with processed food, so we don't want to go down that road again, surely. So farming is really important, and it's really important to get that right. So we want to get the soil right, the biome of the soil right, and we want it to absorb moisture and help prevent flooding. All of those things that farming can give to the country and to people are, I think, being increasingly valued, and people want to reconnect a little bit.
I want to ask you, in terms of managing the metrics of looking at the impact of farming on climate change, do you believe that the farming community has the know-how to really know if it is contributing positively to the environment?
I certainly think that the Pasture-Fed Livestock Association is a group dedicated to feeding animals properly, are doing a tremendous amount of work in that area, and they're also looking at how you measure. This group is actually trying to get to the bottom of how much carbon cows are actually, or land can sequestrate if you have a grass-fed system.
So if you look at this division that's increasingly getting into the public's vocabulary about the difference between industrial farming and, if you like, more traditional methods of farming, do you think this is a real difference? I mean, is it a useful thing for the public to grab hold on? I want to have food that's not produced through industrial farming. What does that actually mean in terms of the quality of the foods that you consume and what the animals are fed?
Yeah, I think it's terribly important, and it is a good way of trying to engage with people about it. And if you can do that in a way that people kind of understand, you've got to have that little hook, haven't you? You've got to get that little hook in people to get them interested. And I say to people, oh, do you know your brain is 60% fat? And when you were called fathead at school, it wasn't an insult. You really want a fat head. And do you know how to feed your brain? And people haven't got a clue that they need to be maybe eating the right fats for them. But we do know that we've got a huge problem with mental health issues, like 25%.
Governments are telling people they should, on average, consume less than 35% of all energy from fats. And it gives the impression that the lower the amount of fat that you consume, the better. Because it doesn't say stop at 20%, it says less than 35. So there's still a lot of 0% fat products out in the supermarkets.
Yep.
Clearly you're not a fan of that particular guideline from governments.
No, well, it's just, it started off as a lie with our friend Ansel Keys, who did a lot of damage in that area. And it continues, and when I see supermarkets saying, oh, we've got less saturated fat in them, I think, yes, they're going to be putting more sugar in and other rubbish, which is more damaging. And why is that happening? And it's obviously, I think, things like maybe the Food Standards Agency and government is too much in the pocket of the big food business in some way. Fatty acids, you've got to have the right balance. And mostly people haven't got any idea, they might have heard of omega-3, but they probably won't have heard of omega-6 and maybe not 9. Yeah. But it's really important for us to know about those things, and especially for pregnant women.
Well, look, can we talk about the B word, Brexit?
Right.
So Brexit obviously has a lot of opportunities. It has challenges as well. Can you just talk about the positive? What could actually happen in a good case scenario? At the moment, a huge amount of food is imported from the EU. The payments that come through from the EU end up in a very small proportion of landowners.
Well, I think
largely.
that's certainly happened in the past. If my understanding is correct, something like 80% of the money that came from Europe went to 20% of the richest farmers. Yeah. And that helped increase industrialisation and drove small farmers from the land. So you could say that Europe has caused more harm to the farming industry in this country and to people because we've got worse food and more food-related illness than ever. And that's why I say, as we were just talking earlier, surely it's an opportunity to say, let's be a beacon in this country for food and health. We could start actually a completely new food system. There's so much allowed into food that shouldn't be there. Yep. And if we said, okay, well, let's take this opportunity today to say, right, farmers and doctors need to work together to work out what is good food for us, and then we produce that.
Yeah, yeah.
And we could use also that as a measure to stop unwanted food being imported into the country, because we could reposition ourselves and say, we are going to be the headlight or the leading country in the world who is going to deal with the food and health issue.
Well, Durwin, it's been fascinating talking to you. I think what you're really saying, you're talking about real food for real people, and you're also talking about the need to get the information out to create, if you like, a revolution from the bottom up. Am I right?
Yeah, I think it's hearts and minds and not bombs, really, that's going to do this job. Yes. And if we can do that, and people, people have walked through this field and they've come through the farm and they're just happy. They said, oh, isn't that beautiful? I mean, this is not going to produce any food for humans, but it is going to produce a lot of food for birds and insects over the winter. Yeah, which is going to be great. This is biodiversity in action. I've been talking to Durwin Banks in Sussex at the Linseed farm. Thank you very much for listening.